Neon Nectar. In the rain-slicked districts of Neo-Kyoto, a disillusioned data broker stumbles upon a black market delicacy, a synthetic nectar that grants temporary, vivid memories of a utopian past. The taste of sunshine and clean air, a stark contrast to the city's perpetual twilight, draws them deeper into a dangerous network of nostalgia dealers. The perpetual twilight of Neo-Kyoto clung to everything. It wasn't true night, not exactly, but a perpetual gloom filtered through the dense layers of smog and the relentless, glowing advertisements that plastered every surface. Rain, a fine, almost imperceptible mist, seemed to be the city's default setting, coating the towering chrome structures and ancient, repurposed temples alike in a slick, reflective sheen. It was a city that hummed, a low, constant thrum of maglev trains, the distant whir of delivery drones, and the ceaseless chatter of a million digital conversations. Kaito, our protagonist, knew that hum intimately. It was the soundtrack to his life, a monotonous rhythm that seeped into his bones. He was a data broker, a middleman in the vast, murky exchanges of information that formed the city's true currency. His office, if you could call it that, was a cramped, perpetually damp cubicle tucked away in the sprawling Shinjuku underbelly, a labyrinthine network of forgotten service tunnels and repurposed sewers that now housed a thriving black market. The air here was thick with the scent of recycled synth plastics, cheap fried noodles, and the metallic tang of ozone from faulty wiring. Tonight, the rain seemed particularly insistent, drumming a slow, hypnotic rhythm on the corrugated ferrocrete roof of his cubicle. Kaito leaned back in his worn, simulated leather chair, the faint glow of his terminal screen illuminating the tired lines around his eyes. He wore a standard-issue data broker's uniform. A dark, utilitarian jumpsuit made of a slick, water-resistant fabric, it seems faintly glowing with low-level bioluminescence. A small, almost imperceptible patch on his left sleeve displayed his current network status, online. Idle. He was tired, the kind of deep weariness that no amount of synth caffeine could touch. The data packets he'd been shuffling all day felt heavy, like lead in his digital hands. He craved something different. A low chime from his comms unit pulled him from his reverie. It was a private, encrypted channel, one he reserved for only the most unusual and lucrative propositions. The sender was an anonymous client, a frequent but utterly untraceable presence on the network, known only by the cryptic handle, Dreamweaver. The message was brief: meeting. Usual place. Special consignment. Tonight. Usual place was the Whispering Alley Tea House, a peculiar establishment even by underbelly standards. It was a tiny, unassuming storefront wedged between a grimy chrome-plating workshop and a bustling synth spice vendor. Its exterior was nondescript, a single, grimy holographic lantern flickering above a heavy, dented metal door. But inside, it was a world apart. Kaito sighed, pushing himself up. He pulled on a thin, hooded cloak, its dark fabric designed to absorb ambient light, making him a shadow in the already dim passages. The faint scent of stale ramen from his lunch still lingered in the air of his cubicle. He wished for something else, something real. Stepping out into the underbelly's main thoroughfare was like plunging into a swirling river of humanity and machine. The air was thick with the metallic tang of the rain, mixed with the sharp, sweet scent of illicit bioluminescent fungi growing in cracks, and the distant, acrid smell of burning refuse. The ground vibrated with the heavy footsteps of cargo loaders and the silent glide of personal transport drones. Figures blurred past him, their clothing a chaotic tapestry of utility, augmentation, and salvage tech. The Whispering Alley Tea House was easy to miss. The faint scent of roasted synthetic tea leaves, surprisingly comforting, was the only clue. Kaito pushed open the heavy door, the sound a low, resonant groan. Inside, the tea house was a study in deliberate anachronism. Instead of the usual harsh neon or flickering holograms, the lighting came from dozens of antique-style lanterns, their soft, warm glow casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air was filled with the rich, earthy aroma of brewed tea, a genuine rarity. The tables were dark, polished wood, worn smooth by countless hands. Small, Delicate porcelain teacups sat on woven bamboo placemats. The few patrons present were hushed, their conversations barely audible murmurs. The proprietor, an elderly woman named Madame Yumi, sat behind a low counter, meticulously polishing a set of ceramic teapots. Her face was a network of fine wrinkles, her eyes sharp and knowing. She wore a traditional, dark indigo kimono. Kaito nodded to her, and she gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. He found Dreamweaver in their usual booth, tucked away in the back corner, half hidden behind a translucent screen. Dreamweaver was a silhouette, cloaked and hooded, their face perpetually obscured by shadows and the faint shimmer of their own personal cloaking field. Kaito slid onto the opposite bench. Madame Yumi approached, placing 2 steaming cups of sencha before them. The aroma was subtly vegetal, with a hint of something sweet, like spring rain on new leaves. Kaito took a slow, deliberate sip. It was real tea, he knew. "You have the data?" Dreamweaver's voice, when it came, was a low, synthesized whisper, devoid of emotion but somehow resonant. Kaito pushed a small, flat data chip across the table. It slid silently. Dreamweaver picked it up, their gloved fingers remarkably agile. They ran a scan. A moment later, a low, satisfied hum vibrated in the air around them. "Excellent, Kaito. As always, your discretion is valuable." Then, from within the folds of their cloak, Dreamweaver produced a small, elegant vial. It was made of iridescent glass, shimmering with all the colors of a nebula. Inside, a viscous, golden liquid swirled, catching the soft lantern light. It looked like liquid sunshine, an impossible color in this perpetually gray city. "This," Dreamweaver whispered, their voice taking on a new, almost reverent quality, "is the special consignment." Kaito leaned forward, intrigued. He'd dealt in data packets of every imaginable kind. But never a liquid. "What is it?" "Neon nectar," Dreamweaver replied. "A taste of what was. A memory, made real." Kaito scoffed. "Memories are digital, Dreamweaver. They're encrypted data strings, holographic simulations. They're not liquid." "Ah, but these are different," Dreamweaver said. "These are organic memories. Crafted, not simulated. Synthesized from ancient genetic codes, from the very essence of forgotten flora. A taste of a world that existed before the Great Collapse. Before the smog. Before the chrome." Kaito looked at the vial. He felt a strange pull. The liquid seemed to glow faintly, radiating a warmth that was entirely alien to the cold efficiency of Neo-Kyoto. "What does it do?" "It grants a temporary, vivid recall," Dreamweaver explained. "A glimpse. A sensation. A deep, profound feeling of a past that never was for us. The warmth of natural sunlight on skin. The crispness of unpolluted air. The scent of a genuine, living forest." Kaito's breath hitched. Sunshine. Clean air. These were concepts, fictions, whispered myths in Neo-Kyoto. The idea of truly experiencing them, even for a moment, was intoxicating. "And the price?" Dreamweaver gestured to the vial. "A single drop is expensive. The full vial? Beyond your current compensation." They paused. "However, for your exceptional service tonight, I offer you a sample. A gift." Dreamweaver poured a single, luminous drop of the golden liquid onto a small, sterile ceramic dish. It shimmered, catching the soft lantern light like a tiny, liquid sun. The scent was faint but intoxicating, something green, something floral, something indescribably fresh. It was utterly unlike anything Kaito had ever smelled in Neo-Kyoto. He hesitated, then picked up the dish. He brought the drop to his lips. It was thicker than water, almost like a syrupy oil. The taste. It was an explosion. Not just on his tongue, but in his mind. First, the flavor, sweet, but not cloyingly so, with an underlying tartness and a hint of something earthy. It was like biting into a fruit he couldn't name. Then, the sensations flooded him. He felt warmth. A deep, pervasive warmth, unlike the artificial heating of his cubicle. It was the warmth of sunlight, pure, on his skin. He saw a vast, impossibly blue sky, stretching endlessly above him. He felt the soft caress of a gentle breeze, carrying the scent of something like damp earth and blooming flowers. He heard the distant, melodic chirping of unseen creatures, and the rustle of leaves, actual leaves, not the synthetic variety. He was standing in a field. Green, vibrant green, stretching to a horizon unmarred by towering structures. A single, large tree stood nearby. He could feel the texture of soft grass under his bare feet. And the air. Oh, the air. It was clean, crisp, filling his lungs with a lightness he'd never known. It smelled of rain, yes, but a clean, fresh rain, mingled with the sweetness of flowers and the deep, rich aroma of soil. For a moment, Kaido forgot everything. He was simply there, fully immersed in this impossible memory. The sensation was overwhelmingly pleasant, a profound sense of peace and belonging that brought an unexpected tear to his eye. Then, as quickly as it came, it began to fade. The vibrant colors softened, the sounds grew distant, the warmth receded. He was back in the tea house. He looked at Dreamweaver, his eyes wide. What was that? A glimpse, Dreamweaver repeated. A seed. Do you understand its value now, Kaido? He did. More than understand, he felt it. The memory was already softening, but the feeling lingered. A longing, a desperate yearning for something he'd never truly known. This is dangerous, Kaido said. This isn't just data. This is addiction. Perhaps, Dreamweaver conceded. But it is also hope. For some, it is the only solace in a world that offers little. Or a weapon, capable of turning the hardest soldier into a longing child. Kaido shivered, despite the lingering warmth. He saw the possibilities, both exhilarating and terrifying. We need a distributor, Dreamweaver continued. Someone with your network. Your discretion. Someone who understands the nuances of the underbelly, and the thirst of those who live above it. Kaido was silent, his mind racing. He was a data broker, not a drug dealer. But this wasn't a drug in the conventional sense. It was an experience, a memory. And a craving, he could already feel a subtle pull. I'll consider it, Kaido finally said. Dreamweaver merely hummed. I knew you would, Kaido. The thirst for true beauty is universal, even in Neo-Kyoto. As Kaido left the tea house, the rain seemed heavier, colder. The neon advertisements blared with an almost aggressive intensity. The hum of the city now seemed louder, more oppressive. The scent of synthetic plastics and ozone was suffocating. He walked slowly, his senses heightened, his mind replaying the vivid memory. The taste of sunshine, the scent of untouched earth, the feeling of genuine peace. It was a stark contrast to the reality he now inhabited. The world of Neo-Kyoto, once merely gray and monotonous, now felt actively diminished. The single drop of neon nectar had opened a door in his mind. Over the next few days, Kaido found himself consumed by the decision. He continued his regular data brokering, but his focus wavered. He'd catch himself staring out of his cubicle's small, grimy window at the endless rain, imagining the taste of clean air. One evening, a week after his meeting, he received another encrypted message. This time, it was an offer, a distribution contract for a small, exclusive batch of neon nectar, with a generous commission. And, most importantly, a small, recurring allocation for himself. He stared at the flashing text on his terminal. The choice was clear. Step deeper into the darkness, or forever yearn for a taste of the light. He thought of his life, the relentless grind, the lack of genuine connection, the pervasive sense of unfulfillment. He thought of the fleeting, glorious moment in the green field, beneath the blue sky. With a deep, shaky breath, Kaito typed his acceptance. His first assignment was to find buyers for a small batch, just 5 vials. Dreamweaver specified the target clientele, the city's elite, those desperate for exotic experiences, willing to pay any price for novelty and escape. This meant venturing out of the underbelly, into the upper echelons of Neo-Kyoto, a world Kaito rarely frequented. His first meeting was with a corporate executive named Director Arisawa. The meeting took place in Arisawa's private sky lounge, high above the city, where buildings gleamed with self-cleaning chrome and holographic advertisements shimmered with breathtaking clarity. The lounge itself was minimalist, all glass and polished metal, with a breathtaking panoramic view of the lower city, a sprawling, chaotic tapestry of flickering neon and constant rain. Arisawa himself was immaculate. His tailored suit was made of a dark, flowing fabric that seemed to shift with the light, subtly masking the intricate web of cybernetic implants that snaked beneath his skin. His face, though unaugmented, bore the telltale signs of countless cosmetic procedures. His eyes, however, were tired, almost hollow. The scent of expensive, synthetic floral air fresheners was cloying. Kaito presented the vial of neon nectar in a small, velvet-lined case. Arisawa regarded it with a dismissive air at first. Another synthesized stimulant. Arisawa's voice was a low, bored rumble. I've tried them all. This is different, Director, Kaito said, his voice steady. This is not a stimulant. It's a memory. He opened the case, revealing the iridescent vial. The golden liquid inside seemed to glow. Arisawa picked it up. A flicker of curiosity crossed his otherwise impassive face. Explain. Kaito recounted Dreamweaver's words. He spoke of the blue sky, the clean air, the feeling of sunlight. As he spoke, he could feel his own longing for the nectar's effect. Arisawa listened, his expression slowly shifting from boredom to genuine intrigue. He twisted the vial in his fingers. And the effect? How profound. Profound enough, Director, Kaito said, meeting his gaze. To make you forget, for a moment, that you're in Neo-Kyoto. Arisawa paused, then gave a slow, calculating smile. That, broker, is a promise I might be willing to pay for. The transaction was swift and silent. Arisawa paid a sum that made Kaito's eyes widen. As he was leaving, Arisawa called out, broker. If this is as potent as you claim, expect my call. I may require more. Kaito returned to the underbelly, the weight of the new credits in his digital wallet feeling strangely heavy. He had sold a memory, a piece of a forgotten dream. And he had felt no remorse, only a deeper pull toward the nectar himself. Over the next few weeks, Kaito became a ghost between worlds. By day, he maintained his cover as a data broker. By night, he moved through the gleaming upper districts, meeting with the city's elite, bored corporate scions, jaded politicians, celebrated artists. Each was seeking an escape, a genuine experience in a world that offered only carefully curated simulations. Kaito's attire adapted. For his meetings in the upper city, he invested in a sleek, dark synthwool coat. He learned to project an air of quiet confidence, a detached professionalism. He tasted the fleeting, expensive foods of the elite. Yet, after his brief glimpses of the nectar's promise, they all tasted artificial, empty. The demand for neon nectar was insatiable. Word spread through the elite circles. Kaito found himself mediating ever larger deals. Dreamweaver, always unseen, always a whisper in his comms, provided the supply, meticulously timed deliveries to hidden drop points within the underbelly. Kaito was becoming wealthy beyond his wildest dreams. His cubicle in the underbelly remained his base, but he now owned a small, clean apartment in a mid-level residential tower, with a window that offered a slightly less obscured view of the sky. He could afford genuine coffee. He bought a data mask with adaptive optics. But the price was more than just money. The deeper he went, the more he felt the insidious pull of the nectar. He started taking small sips himself, just enough to keep the memory fresh. He'd find himself in the middle of a bustling market, and he'd close his eyes, a single drop of nectar on his tongue, and be transported to a silent, sun-drenched beach. These escapes became essential. The more he saw of the city's opulent but ultimately sterile upper reaches, the more he longed for the genuine. The pristine, filtered air of the corporate towers felt thin and lifeless compared to the memory of fresh, natural oxygen. The shimmering, holographic displays seemed dull next to the vivid, natural colors he'd experienced. He was aware of the irony. He was helping the wealthy escape the very reality they had helped create, a reality he himself now found increasingly unbearable. One rain-soaked evening, during a routine pickup of a new batch of nectar from a designated drop point, a derelict automated dry cleaning facility in a forgotten industrial zone, Kaito noticed something amiss. The air, usually stagnant and metallic, carried a faint, unusual scent. Something burnt, something synthetic, but also something distinctly organic. He proceeded with caution. The drop point was a series of abandoned industrial units, their ferrocrete walls crumbling. The only light came from the perpetual twilight outside and the occasional flickering of faulty street lamps. As he approached the designated unit, he heard it, a faint, low hum. And then, a glint of chrome, half hidden in the shadows. Not the sleek, polished chrome of an executive, but the rough, utilitarian plating of a military-grade security drone. Kaito froze, melting into the deeper shadows behind a pile of rusted pipes. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was not a standard patrol. This was a stakeout. He activated his comms, a silent, encrypted pulse to Dreamweaver. Anomaly. Drop point compromised. No immediate reply. He watched. Two corporate security drones, their optics glowing with an eerie red light, moved with silent, predatory precision around the entrance of the unit. They were larger, more heavily armored than standard patrol models. Kaito knew their capabilities, they could render a human immobile, or vaporize them. The air thrummed with a low, almost subsonic vibration, the active cloaking field of something large. Kaito realized the scent he'd noticed earlier was getting stronger here, the unusual organic burn. It was familiar, vaguely unsettling. Then, a voice. Not Dreamweaver's synthesized whisper, but a harsh, guttural command, amplified by a comms unit. Secure the perimeter. We're close. It was a voice Kaito recognized, Captain Thorne, head of security for the Omnicorp megacorporation, a ruthless enforcer. Omnicorp. The largest, most powerful entity in Neo-Kyoto. If they were involved, this was far more than a black market bust. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the unit, followed by a concussive blast that sent dust and debris showering. A drone nearest the entrance crumpled, its optics flickering and dying. Then, a figure emerged from the unit, a shadowy blur against the interior gloom. They were tall, fluid in their movements, armed with something that crackled with blue energy. Kaito's augmented vision struggled to resolve the details, but he recognized the distinctive silhouette of a bioengineered combat unit. But this one was different. It moved with a raw, almost feral grace. And as it stepped into a sliver of light, Kaito saw its skin. It wasn't the usual dull synth flesh or polished chrome. It was iridescent, shimmering with faint, bioluminescent patterns. And the smell. That organic, burnt scent was stronger now, mixed with something earthy, like scorched leaves and damp soil. The bio unit engaged the second drone, its movements too fast for the eye to follow. There was a brief, violent struggle, ending with the drone in pieces on the wet ground. Then, the bio unit turned its head, its eyes glowing with a faint, multifaceted light. It seemed to look directly at Kaito's hiding spot. He felt a sudden, primal fear. He knew, instinctively, that this was not a human, not truly. It was something else, something born of the nectar. A low, resonant sound filled the air, a deep, melodic hum that seemed to vibrate in Kaido's chest. It was the same hum he'd heard from Dreamweaver. Suddenly, a torrent of laser fire erupted from above, tearing through the roof. Omnicorp reinforcements. More drones, descending rapidly. The bio unit didn't hesitate. It plunged back into the dark interior of the unit. Kaido caught a final glimpse of its shimmering skin, and then it was gone. Captain Thorne's voice boomed over the comms again, closer this time. Seal the sector. No one in, no one out. They're in there. Kaido knew he had to move. He couldn't risk being caught. He activated his silent comms again, sending a desperate burst to Dreamweaver, threat neutralized for now. Source compromised. Thorne's forces. Get out. He began to backtrack, moving swiftly and silently, his ears straining for the sounds of pursuit. The battle raged behind him. He was deep in it now, irrevocably linked to this dangerous network. He didn't make it to his cubicle. The underbelly was swarming with corporate security. He ended up taking refuge in a forgotten, derelict ventilation shaft, its metal grating damp and cold against his skin. The air here was heavy with the smell of rust and decaying synth waste. From his hiding spot, he watched the city unfold. The neon advertisements pulsed with frantic urgency, broadcasting emergency alerts and corporate warnings. The humming of maglev seemed to carry a note of tension. The rain continued, a steady, chilling drizzle. He knew then that his world had fundamentally changed. Neon nectar wasn't just a luxury anymore. It was a weapon, a source of power, and its origin was clearly something Omnicorp desperately wanted to control. The tantalizing taste of a lost utopia now had a bitter, dangerous aftertaste. He stayed hidden for hours. He emerged, cold and stiff, his clothes clinging to him. He needed to find Dreamweaver. He needed answers. And he needed to know if the source of the nectar, that impossible beauty, was still intact. He sent a coded message, not to Dreamweaver directly, but to a dead drop Kaido knew only Dreamweaver accessed, source location compromised. Need to talk. Urgent. Tonight. The Clockwork Alchemist. The Clockwork Alchemist was another of the underbelly's peculiar establishments, a shop filled with salvaged machinery and intricate, whirring automatons. The scent of oil and ozone was pervasive, mixed with the faint, sweet smell of experimental biopolymers. It was a neutral ground, rarely watched. Kaido arrived first, blending into the shadows cast by towering piles of discarded circuit boards. The proprietor, a stoic old man with a bionic eye, merely nodded at Kaido's presence. Finally, Dreamweaver arrived. Their presence was as subtle as ever. "You're late," Kaido said. "Circumstances required discretion," Dreamweaver whispered. "Omnicorp is moving. Fast. And they're not just after the nectar. They're after him." "Him?" Kaido pressed. "Who is him?" "The cultivator," Dreamweaver revealed. "The one who can truly create the nectar. Not just synthesize, but grow. From forgotten seeds, from salvaged genetics. He is the last of his kind, a biobotanist from before the collapse. Kept in cryostasis for centuries, awakened only recently." Kaido stared. A pre-collapse human. And the bio-unit, the one at the drop point. His protector, Dreamweaver confirmed. His loyal guardian. Genetically engineered, augmented, and infused with the very essence of the nectar's source. He's more plant than human, more instinct than logic. Fiercely protective. Kaido finally understood the organic scent, the shimmering skin. It was a living embodiment of the nectar's source. Omnicorp knows where he is, don't they? They are close, Dreamweaver admitted. The drop point was a trap. They followed the nectar's signature. And they will stop at nothing to acquire the source. Imagine, Kaido, if Omnicorp controlled true memory. True escape. They would control the very essence of desire. Kaido felt a chill. We have to get him out. Can we move him? Dreamweaver was silent for a long moment. His cultivation chamber is not easily moved. It is a living ecosystem. An Omnicorp has surrounded his location. Where is he? Kaido demanded. Deep in the forgotten sector, Dreamweaver replied. In the remnants of the old botanical gardens. He has been there for years, cultivating, slowly rebuilding the lost flora of old Earth. Kaido pictured the green field, the blue sky. He thought of the desperate faces of the elite who bought the nectar, and then, more disturbingly, he thought of his own yearning for it. If Omnicorp gained control, that escape would be twisted, weaponized. What's the plan? Kaido asked, his voice firm. He wasn't just a data broker anymore. Diversion, Dreamweaver said. Omnicorp is consolidating their forces for a direct assault on the cultivator's location. We need to create enough chaos in the upper levels to draw their security away. And you, Kaido, with your network, are uniquely positioned to do it. Kaido frowned. Chaos? How? A data burst, Dreamweaver explained. A massive, untraceable release of their most carefully guarded corporate secrets. Broadcast it citywide. It will cause a panic. They'll have no choice but to reallocate resources to damage control. Kaido's mind raced. This was a direct declaration of war against Omnicorp. His life, as he knew it, would be over. It will be an unholy mess, Kaido said. My network will be fried. I'll be hunted. True, Dreamweaver agreed. But the alternative is silence. And a permanent twilight. Kaido took a deep breath. He was risking everything for a dream, for a memory, for a taste of something that barely existed. I'm in, Kaido said, his voice resolute. Tell me what you need. The plan was complex, risky, and exhilarating. Kaido spent the next 48 hours working non-stop from a series of highly encrypted, mobile data hubs. He called in every favor, every contact. He wasn't brokering data this time, he was weaponizing it. He targeted Omnicorp's most vulnerable points, their tightly controlled financial ledgers, their internal communications, their proprietary research on public manipulation. He crafted a cascading data bomb, designed to bypass their formidable firewalls and then explode, releasing a torrent of damning information across every public and private network in Neo-Kyoto. He worked in a frenzy, the lines of code blurring. His clothes became stained with synth caffeine and the residue of nutrient bars. The air in his temporary safe house, a cramped, forgotten loft overlooking a perpetually busy maglev line, was thick with the scent of hot circuits and his own nervous sweat. The constant hum of the city outside seemed to mock his efforts. Dreamweaver provided the last, crucial piece, access codes to Omnicorp's primary network conduit. It was the perfect choke point. As the clock ticked down to the designated strike time, Kaido felt a strange mixture of dread and liberation. His hands trembled slightly. This was it. The point of no return. The city outside hummed, ignorant of the digital storm about to break. He could see the endless rain, reflecting the neon glow of the advertising towers, painting the sky in garish blues and reds. At precisely 3 o'clock, Kaido hit the trigger. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the city convulsed. Not physically, but digitally. The pervasive hum of the city changed. It became a frantic, high-pitched whine. On every public display, every personal compad, every corporate monitor, the carefully curated digital advertisements dissolved into a chaotic torrent of raw data. Text scrolled at impossible speeds. Omnicorp blackmail files exposed, dirt on Director Arisawa's offshore accounts, illegal genetic experiments revealed. Panic erupted across the city. Traffic lights flickered erratically. Automated shops stalled. Personal comms flooded with unsourced, chaotic information. The carefully maintained facade of Omnicorp's omnipotence shattered. Kaido watched from his loft, a strange, grim satisfaction settling in his chest. His screen was a blur of successful transmissions, confirmation that the databomb had worked. But his own comms were already screaming with alerts. He disconnected, pulling the plug on his temporary hub, severing his digital ties. He was now off the grid, a ghost in the machine. He packed a small bag, a few synth rations, a compact multi-tool, and a handful of the precious neon nectar vials. He would need them. The journey to the forgotten sector was long and dangerous. The moment he stepped out into the streets, the change was palpable. The city, usually so ordered, was a chaotic mess. Automated vehicles stalled. Pedestrians, their faces illuminated by the frantic, flashing information on their compads, stumbled. Corporate security drones, their red optics scanning frantically, crisscrossed the sky, they're wearing a frantic counterpoint to the wailing of sirens that had just begun to pierce the air. Kaido moved quickly, blending into the panicked crowds. He knew this would buy them time, but not much. Omnicorp would retaliate, and they would retaliate hard. He made his way to the outskirts of the underbelly, then deeper, into the decrepit, forgotten regions. The rain continued, relentless, washing over the broken ferrocrete. The air here was heavy with the smell of decay. The neon advertisements were fewer, broken, their flickering lights casting grotesque shadows. The deeper he went into the forgotten sector, the more the city seemed to dissolve around him. The towering buildings gave way to crumbling, low-rise structures. Overgrown synthvine choked the derelict walls. The hum of the city was almost gone here. He followed the faint, almost imperceptible signal Dreamweaver had provided. It led him through abandoned freight tunnels, then through choked service conduits. Finally, after hours of relentless travel, the signal grew stronger. It led him to a massive, corroded metal door, half buried under rubble. The air here was different. Beneath the decay, there was a faint, surprising freshness, a subtle green scent. He tried the door. It was locked. He brought out his multi-tool, its tiny laser cutting through the rusted hinges with a soft hiss. The door groaned open, revealing a dark, damp passage beyond. He entered, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The passage was long, sloping downwards, the air growing warmer, more humid. The scent of fresh earth and growing things intensified, a stark anomaly in this dead part of the city. The passage opened into a vast, cavernous space. Kaido gasped. It was a garden. Not a synth garden, or a carefully curated corporate park, but a genuine, living, breathing garden. Plants of every conceivable shape and size thrived under a vast, bioluminescent dome, their leaves 1,000 shades of green, their flowers bursting with vibrant, impossible colors. Water trickled down artificial rock formations, forming small, clear pools. The air was thick with the scent of earth, of blooming flowers, of fresh, unpolluted water. It was the scent of the nectar, magnified 1,000 times. In the center of this impossible oasis, connected by a network of glowing tubes to the dome above and the ground below, was a massive, cylindrical cryopod. And within it, suspended in a shimmering liquid, was a human figure. The cultivator. He looked ancient, his face etched with wrinkles, his sparse hair a pale white. His skin, however, had a faint, healthy glow. He wore simple, almost primeval garments woven from natural fibers. Even in stasis, he radiated a profound sense of peace. And beside the cryopod, partially concealed by towering, unfamiliar foliage, was the bio-unit. Its iridescent skin shimmered, reflecting the garden's glowing light. It stood utterly still, like a statue, its multifaceted eyes scanning the entrance. It was the guardian. Kaido felt a profound reverence. This was the source of the nectar, the root of the dream. This was what Omnicorp coveted. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A deep, resonant thrum vibrated through the air. And then, a dull, repetitive thudding, growing closer. Omnicorp. They were here. The bio-unit moved, fluid and silent, positioning itself between Kaito and the cryopod. Its glowing eyes fixed on the entrance. A low growl, more animal than machine, vibrated in the air around it. Kaito drew his multi-tool, setting it to high-frequency pulse. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was all he had. The metal door at the entrance to the passage groaned, then burst inward with a resounding crash. Laser fire ripped through the passage, tearing chunks from the walls. Corporate security drones flooded in, followed by a squad of heavily armed enforcers in bulky combat suits. And at their head, Captain Thorne. "There he is." Thorne's voice boomed. "Secure the target. Neutralize any resistance." The bio-unit roared. It moved with blinding speed, a shimmering blur of iridescent skin and crackling energy. It engaged the drones, its natural grace a stark contrast to their mechanical efficiency. It moved through the laser fire, deflecting shots, tearing through the drones. Kaito fired his multi-tool, a futile spray of high-frequency pulses at the advancing enforcers. They were too armored, too numerous. He realized then that the bio-unit wasn't just fighting, it was protecting. It was drawing the fire. "We need to create a path," Kaito yelled to the bio-unit. He pointed to a narrow, crumbling service tunnel hidden behind a waterfall of cascading synth vines. The bio-unit seemed to respond. It let out another guttural roar, then launched itself at the closest enforcer, smashing through its armor. The diversion was enough. "Go. Protect him," Kaito yelled, pointing again at the cryopod. The bio-unit hesitated for a split second, its eyes flickering between Kaito and the cryopod. Then, with a burst of impossible speed, it moved towards the cryopod, shielding it with its own body, its iridescent skin shimmering fiercely as laser fire rained down. Kaito knew what he had to do. The cultivator couldn't be moved easily. But the garden could be destroyed. And if the garden died, so did the source of the nectar. This was their leverage. He began to target the glowing tubes that connected the cryopod to the dome and the earth. With each pulse from his multi-tool, a tube ruptured, spewing nutrient-rich liquid onto the ground. The bioluminescent plants around him began to flicker, their glow dimming. "Stop him!" Thorne roared. "Don't let him damage the ecosystem." Enforcers diverted their attention to Kaito. He dodged, weaving between the giant plants. The air grew thick with the scent of scorched flora and ozone from the laser blasts. He took a glancing hit to his arm, a sharp pain blossoming. He gritted his teeth, focused on the tubes. Suddenly, a blinding flash from the entrance. And then, a familiar, synthesized whisper, amplified and distorted, echoing through the cavern. "Omnicorp. Your actions have consequences. Dreamweaver." A barrage of explosive charges erupted at the entrance. Enforcers stumbled, disoriented. Dreamweaver had created another diversion. Kaito saw his chance. He targeted the main conduit, a thick, pulsating tube that ran directly into the cryopod. With a desperate yell, he poured all his remaining power into his multi-tool, firing a continuous, high-frequency blast. The tube ruptured with a sickening squelch, spewing golden liquid, pure neon nectar, across the floor. The plants around it withered almost instantly. The dome above flickered, its light dying. The bio-unit let out a mournful wail, a sound of profound loss, as it watched its beloved garden die around it. "No!" Thorne screamed. "You fool! What have you done?" "I've cut off your supply, Thorne," Kaito yelled back. "You won't control this dream." Thorne ordered a full assault. Kaito knew he was out of time. He was trapped. But then, the bio-unit, its iridescent skin now dull and desaturated, turned its multifaceted eyes to Kaito. A flicker of something passed between them. The bio-unit moved to the cryopod. With surprising gentleness, it began to pry open the access panel. It found a smaller, emergency power cell, and plugged itself directly into the cryopod, its own energy flowing into the unit. The cultivator's eyes fluttered open. The cultivator, awakened from centuries of stasis, looked around with serene, surprisingly lucid eyes. He saw his dying garden, the battle raging, the bio-unit pouring its life force into his cryopod. His gaze settled on Kaito, a look of profound understanding. He raised a frail, trembling hand and pointed to a single, small, glowing seed pod hidden beneath a shriveling leaf on a dying plant. It was the only part of the garden still alive. The bio-unit understood. With its remaining strength, it plucked the seed pod. Then, with a final, heartbreaking shudder, its iridescent skin faded completely, and it slumped lifelessly against the cryopod. Its protector had given its last. Kaito rushed forward, grabbing the seed pod. It was warm in his hand, pulsating softly. It contained the last, pure essence of the nectar source. The cultivator. Thorn roared, ordering his men to seize the pod. But Kaito, clutching the seed, made a desperate decision. He pulled out one of the remaining vials of neon nectar from his bag. With trembling fingers, he uncorked it and drank the entire vial. The world exploded in light and color. The garden, even in its dying state, shimmered with a final, intense burst of bioluminescence. The sounds of battle faded, replaced by the rush of clean wind, the scent of fresh earth. Kaito felt a surge of incredible energy, a clarity of thought he'd never experienced. He was seeing the world through the cultivator's eyes. He saw not just the garden, but the vast, untamed wilderness it represented. He understood the profound connection between the cultivator and the land. And then, he understood something else. The cultivator had given him the seed not just to save it, but to carry it. With this newfound clarity and surge of power, Kaito moved. He dodged laser fire with impossible grace. He raced towards a large, crumbling fissure in the back wall of the cavern. "He's escaping!" Thorn yelled, but Kaito was already there. He plunged into the fissure, scrambling over jagged rocks, the golden seed pod clutched tight in his hand. Behind him, he heard the frustrated shouts of the enforcers, and the sounds of heavy machinery beginning to collapse the entrance. He emerged into another forgotten corner of the underbelly, far from the battle. The rain was still falling. The familiar hum of the city was distant. His body ached, his arm throbbed, but in his hand, the small, golden seed pod pulsed faintly, a fragile beacon of hope. He was alone now, hunted, severed from his old life. But he had something far more valuable. The last pure essence of a forgotten world. The potential for true beauty, for genuine life, in a world consumed by imitation. He looked down at the seed pod, its faint glow reflecting in the endless puddles. The scent of clean air, though fading, still lingered in his mind. He knew what he had to do. He would find a safe place. He would learn. He would protect this seed, this last vestige of sunshine and clean air, from the endless twilight. And perhaps, one day, he would find a way to plant it. Not just for the wealthy, not just for an escape, but for everyone. A genuine dream, in a city that had forgotten how to truly dream. The rain continued to fall, washing over the grime and the neon, but for Kaito, the future, though uncertain, held a faint, golden promise. He was no longer just a data broker, he was a custodian of hope, carrying the last taste of a utopian past into a challenging, yet potentially brighter, future.